Hi guys, it's Kelly here and I'm back with another video. Today's video is featuring a new product. This is from Gina K Designs and it is called Terrific Textiles. This is from the release that dropped last week, and actually this is the video I was telling you about where I just could not walk away. So I have a couple of colors of cardstock here. I'm using blue raspberry, tranquil, teal, and is it ocean mist, I think. And I have a lot of card examples for you today. Why do I have so many? Why couldn't I let this video go the other day when I was talking, when I was telling you about how overwhelmed I was? I think that these stamp sets like this, often get overlooked because, even by myself, to be quite honest, because they are not maybe as exciting as like a floral bouquet, or they're not as cute as, a cupcake or something like that, and it's not something that we often think that we need. But you can do so many things with a stamp set like this. So I'm going to show you a bunch of ways that we can build different backgrounds, ways that we can do different card designs, and we can add different things to this stamp set to make every card look different. So first things first, we're just being very basic here and just repeat stamping a pattern. I chose to do this in my Misty. I will tell you that it is faster to do with an acrylic block, but I find that I have a little bit more trouble lining things up with an acrylic block, and so that is why I do it with my Misty. Each one of these I did stamp twice in the teal, just so that they would be a little bit darker. I'm going to use this same stamp set now on the teal cardstock, but I'm going to stamp it in a clear embossing ink. So we have one that is at a white card base with a teal stamping on it, and then we will have a teal one that has white embossing on it. And again, just two different ways, and you could use any of the designs in this stamp set, or any kind of background builder sets that you have that maybe you don't kind of get out and use because, again, they aren't necessarily that exciting when you look at them as individual elements. But they can bring they're a good supporting actor. That's the way that I guess I should put it. So here I stamped this 3 times in the clear embossing ink, and then I sprinkled on the white detail embossing powder, and then I'm going to go ahead and heat set this. I found for me 3 was my max amount of stampings that I could do before I ran the risk that my embossing powder wasn't going to stick. So I stamped 3, I pulled it out of my Misty, and then heat set the white embossing powder, and then I stuck it back in my Misty. I did I do more stampings? I may have with that one, but I'm not positive. But the 3 is like my max, and then I have to heat emboss. So for this one, which is, it looks kind of like a beaded pattern, I stamped it twice in the, what is this, blue raspberry? Forgive me for the names. So I stamped it a couple of times to make it darker. And again, 3 was like my max before. I was worried that it would kind of have too much ink and it would blow out the lines and they would not be clear. And then I'm going to go ahead and move this up, and I am going to stamp it. We're stamping in the same color again. But this time I'm not going to stamp as many times, which is going to give me a little bit of a lighter look. So I have the real dark one that I stamped multiple times at the bottom, and then I have the one in the middle that I stamped just one time. I am going to then clean my stamp off, and then I'm going to switch colors. And for this design, I'm just drying it off with my hands to make sure that I don't get any extra moisture. And then I'm going to switch colors, and this is going to create kind of a gradient. So I'm going to do the same thing with my next color. I'm going to stamp it multiple times to make it darker, and then I will stamp it just the one time to have it lighter. And again, you can do this with any of your inks, any of your stamps. But anywho, back to what I was going to say is, if you have one of these, or you don't know that you need one of these, they're really great supporting actors. So you can build your own backgrounds. It doesn't require you to buy one stamp set and then repeatedly use that background. This allows you to build multiple backgrounds. So you could use any of these. I'm showing you how to use them by themselves. Like, this isn't even, if you put a beautiful floral over this, it would be a gorgeous background. I do not stamp this fast, just to be clear. I am speeding it up because I'm doing the same thing over and over again. But like, if you put a floral or something else over top of this background is going to be a great way to introduce color and complement your focal point. But I chose to use them just by themselves, and I was super happy with the way that the designs came out, and I didn't need anything extra. These are great kind of backgrounds for masculine cards. I've never met a card maker that didn't struggle with a more masculine card. These are great for sympathy cards. Sympathy cards are often very difficult because you don't want it to be overdone. You don't want to have, the glitter and the gemstones and all of that stuff on there when you're giving a card to somebody who is in mourning. This one, I am going to be doing tone-on-tone stamping, which you can also do this with watermark ink. It is a bit darker when you use tone-on-tone, and that is why I purposely chose to do it that way. So the bottom I stamped in the regular color. This one here I stamped in Versamark ink. And I just wanted to show you that actually if you move fast enough, both of these will emboss. I am using clear embossing powder over these two lines, which is just going to add some shine to the stamping that I have. And again, it's just another technique or another something that you can use for your stuff in your stash to get a different kind of look. All of these, like, we're just going through and we're building up the bases. We'll be doing the extras once all of this initial stamping is done. So now those are both heat embossed. I'm going to go in a third time. Again, I was looking for more of a gradient, and this time I'm just going to stamp it in the Versamark ink so you can see that you can still see this. It's just lighter, and then that's it. That's all I'm going to do for now. This one's probably one of my favorite ones. So these are like little fans or like tassels kind of. And for this one, I am going to be doing more clear embossing. So I'm stamping them. I stamped it twice in Versamark ink to make sure I was going to get good coverage and it was going to stay wet. And then I'm going to move it up to continue building my pattern. One thing that I probably should note is you may notice that I didn't always clean my stamps. You probably should. Cleaning your stamps in between helps prevent mishaps, getting ink on your fingers and then getting it on your card, setting down your stamp where, you get ink and you don't want it. I wasn't particularly worried about that, just because I know that I'm comfortable with it not being utter perfection. But if you are a person who you're very worried about that, or the card is for someone extremely special, you may want to make sure you're cleaning in between. So here I've stamped them. Again, my max is 3, so I've stamped my 3 in Versamark, and then I'm clear heat embossing. This is going to allow me to use this card with an emboss resist. So we'll be doing some ink blending later on. You can tell I didn't preheat my gun here because it took forever. It took forever. So again, it's just giving it this super nice shine. It's giving this tone-on-tone look. This would be a really great subtle background for another, focal image. But again, we're not doing any focal pieces. And then I just put it back in my MISTI to continue stamping my pattern until it got to a place that I was happy with where it was. So just heat embossing that again, same thing that we just did, and then we will move on to the next card. So for the next card, you may notice a theme here. This is, again, the same stamp set. So one we're doing on a colored base and one we're doing on a white base. And for this one, I stamped it down in the full strength of the color. And then I'm going to do second generation stamping. So I am going to put the stamp in place without re-inking it. I am going to re-stamp it. And this is going to give me just, again, a different, how many times am I going to say that? A different look. And you can just see, and I could have done this with any one of these backgrounds that, any one of the stamps that's in this Terrific Textiles, and gotten a different look because it would be a different pattern. But any one of these things that I'm applying here will work with any of them, with any background builder set that you might have your hands on. So I'm just moving down across the card, stamping it one time full strength. Here, you'll notice that I'm using just a scrap piece of cardstock, and that's just to get off the extra ink that's hanging, because like I have pieces that are hanging over the edges, so it has nothing to stamp into to absorb the ink. And I didn't want it to stamp darker with my second generation stamping, so I just used an extra piece of cardstock to kind of wipe that off. So I've just moved throughout the entire piece, full strength, and then second generation until my entire panel was covered. So let's see what we've done here. So we have a colored one and a white one for each one of these designs. And there were more stamps in this set that I didn't even use, guys. So we're just kind of recapping before we go in and then start adding the extras. So for the first extra, here is that ink blending that I talked about. So I'm using the same color scheme. That has not changed. I am just using it right over the colored cardstock. And at the bottom where it's darker, it's going to help those images kind of pop forward. And because that embossing is resisting the ink where the cardstock is absorbing the ink. So each time I'm starting at the bottom and I'm working my way towards the top, and I'm just going to keep applying ink until I am happy with the amount of ink I have down and the resist that I have going. Once the ink is applied and I'm happy with that, I will go in with just a slightly damp cloth and kind of buff over the top of it just to get off any excess ink, and that will also help me to have that pattern kind of pop forward. Once that was done, I knew that I was going to add this to a white card base, and so I just went in and I trimmed off 1/4 of an inch to give myself a little bit of a border. I trimmed about 1/8 of an inch off the top and bottom just so I didn't lose my pattern. For this one, the way that we're going to add detail is we're going to go in with some colored pencils. So I have chosen 2 colors, one darker than my stamping and one lighter than my stamping. And I'm just going in, I'm not solidly coloring anything. I am just doing little lines to kind of mimic how that tassel would look in real life. And then I'm going in, I know that it looks probably like a white or a yellow, I'm not really sure. It's actually like a bluish gray color that I'm using there. For here, for the second generation stamping, I'm using a much lighter blue as my darker color, and then I will go back in with that super light color again over top of it. And this is just adding some more texture to our flat stamping. I went through and did this all the way around because I knew how I was going to build my card. This one, we're going to give it a little bit of dimension with a Copic marker. You could also use a darker colored pencil. And here, we're just going to add a shadow. And that's going to make this pattern kind of jump off of our page. I like to do my shadows down and to the left, but you could do your shadows down and to the right, up and to the left, up and to the right, as long as you keep it consistent with every angle. You can do it any direction you want, but I like down and to the left because that's how I was taught it in school. You can also do this same trick with the regular stamping. I did not like this as well, and so I showed it to you as an example, but I'm going to be honest, when I was building my card, ultimately I covered it up. For this one that has this like beautiful detailed beaded work, I'm going in with a colored pencil. This one again is that like grayish color, and I'm just randomly filling in circles. This is super easy to do because I have that embossing in place, and so the pencil kind of skips over the embossing and is just filling in those little circles. And I'm going to do this for all 3 layers. So my bottom is my darkest, my mid-tone also has the embossing, and then the top one has no embossing. So this will work however you would like to do it. The embossing isn't necessary. It just adds a little bit of extra shine, which I personally enjoy. So once that's done, then I'm going to go in with a white gel pen, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to randomly fill in some circles and not other circles. I'm going to leave some of them blank. This is just going to give me some dimension and make it look like my beaded portions are actually sparkly. Like the light is catching the bead work. So I'm just going to go through and do all of those. And then the last step that I'm going to do is add actual glitter. So I'm just going in with some Stardust stickles, and again, just picking random circles. So some of them have the colored pencil, some of them have the white gel pen, some of them have the glitter, some of them have nothing at all. And this is going to give us texture that we can feel, also texture that we can see, and just make this portion of the card just that much more interesting. When you're building these patterns, you don't necessarily have to do the whole entire thing. So on this ink blended one, I wanted my pattern to stand out a little bit more. So I went in with my white gel pen and I just added dots on all of the edges of the fans and then on the top as well. Here, I've pulled out some other stamp sets. I actually didn't end up using this one. I did use the sentiments from the succulent one because I love them. And then the other sentiment set, I can't remember the name of it. I think it was one of the minis that you could get because Gina's awesome and her minis are the best. But these are just going to be my sentiments and me beginning to build my card. So for this one, I have a little bit of color. It doesn't actually end up being this big because I didn't like how it looked on the card. But I am stamping in the blue onto this kind of ocean mist color. For this birthday wishes, I am just stamping on a white panel. And these things, they're super simple. These cards are super easy to put together. You build your background however you want. You make it as intricate or as detailed as you want, or you can just leave it simple. Some of them I just left simple. I didn't really add anything to it outside of the stamping. And then, pick whatever sentiment is, your card is going for. We talked about sympathy cards, we talked about more masculine cards. These are great cards for if you need to bring something, to a function, but you don't really know the person super well. Great neutral card. So for this one, I felt like my panel was a little bit big, and in order to kind of bring it in a little bit, yes, I could have trimmed it down, but I'm going to be honest, I didn't want to color anymore. That's very rare for me, but I was rushing. I told you I was very overwhelmed this week. So in order to kind of make the panel appear smaller, I'm just adding some ink blending around the edges, and that will draw your eye to the sentiment and make the panel appear to not take up as much space. So I have my card base now, and then I am using my glue to adhere my pattern. I really was liking how this was looking, and then I will put down that it says, what does it say? Birthday wishes, and then I stamp the thinking of you, which is actually from the textile set. And then I'm going to pop this up on foam, because I do think sometimes a little added dimension is super helpful. And then I will put this right in the center of my card. And you can see this beautiful pattern in the background, but it isn't overwhelming, the entirety of the card. And this was a nice, simple card that you can give to pretty much anyone. For this one, I knew that I was going to kind of trim this white panel. And so I'm stamping it in the coordinating blue for the color or for the card that I'm going to be building. So I stamped this down. This one, again, it's just an encouragement. You are awesome. You can send this to anybody. These are just such good ones to just have in your stash. Or use as, like I said, the supporting actors. So here I have that, like that kind of beaded look that we created. And then I'm going to take this white panel and I'm going to adhere it to the bottom of the card. So at the top, we have this beautiful beading. At the bottom, we give the eye a place to rest. And then in order to finish it off, I do have a piece of, I can't remember the name. It's the navy, but I can't remember the name of her navy. And then I just cut a very thin strip and I will put that right along the top edge there to finish off the card design. Word of note, when you're doing cards like this, you want to make sure either your top or your bottom is bigger. You don't want to do it directly in the middle of the card. It just doesn't look natural. For this one, I am going to be stamping in white pigment ink and then heat embossing in white as well. And this one just says, you can see I'm stocking up on my stash because a lot of these are happy birthday. And I like having them because you never know when you need a birthday card for somebody. And I like, usually for the ladies in my life, I have a very specific idea of what they like. And it's easy for me to sit down and make a card specifically for them. For the men in my life, it is much more challenging for me to come up with a card design that is tailored to them. So these types of cards are much easier for me to use. So we barely even had a story time just because I was so into this is what I'm doing. We have a winter storm rolling through, so that's coming. It's supposed to start tonight at 3 a.m. and then we are supposed to, it's so wild. So right now it's not bad. It's cold. We got some substantial snow over the weekend. It snowed all day on Sunday. But then this one coming through it's supposed to start snowing at 3 a.m., snow through the morning commute. Then, for some unknown reason, it's going to warm up, and in the afternoon, it's going to be sleet and rain. Well, when the snow then comes back through, it's going to create ice. So after the sleet and the rain, then that evening, the storm will still be here, and the temperatures are obviously going to drop. So then we're supposed to get a significant amount of snow into Thursday. So, it's kind of like everybody's like batten down the hatches and, make sure you got what you need to get so that you're not, without during this, or you don't have to go out in this. So we're supposed to get, I think, like 4 inches of snow tomorrow, before the rain comes. So there's going to be like this weird crust of snow in between, or real crust of ice in between all of this snow. It ought to be interesting. So I'll be interested to see if Peanut has school for the next 2 days or not. So as you can see, we're just going through here. We're building each one of these cards. You guys know I like to show you everything, though you probably have gotten the point by now. You've probably gotten the point by now, because you're smart cookies. But I don't want you to miss anything that I did in case you're trying to recreate the card. This one actually is one of my favorite ones, even though there isn't really much to it outside of just that shadow that we added. I really just like that bold print, that bold white print. So for this one, I did some more white heat embossing, this time on the teal cardstock, and then I will be adding this to, like I said, I only did it, you can see that shadow on the top line. I didn't like it, and I'm going to cover it up. So that way I have the clean stamping at the top, which is different than the one we just did, but also I like this one as well. Probably why I started with this one first. I don't know, this pattern just kind of calls to me. Probably because I like the geometrics. But in order to finish this one off, I did add a white strip since I have the color at the bottom. This kind of card design reminds me very much of a like an invitation style kind of card, where you have this, matching color and a matching solid at the bottom, like a matching pattern to the matching solid. So I did go in and add some rhinestones to some of them, specifically these ones. The rest of them I didn't necessarily know that they needed it, but these just helped me kind of fill up those stamped panels. And I just felt like they needed a little extra. But for the majority of them, I didn't add anything extra. I let the pattern do the talking for me. And then that's it. That's all 6 of the cards. So I hope that you guys learned something. I hope that you can see how these types of stamps can be really useful in your stash. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I always appreciate your time, and I will catch you on the next video. Bye.